Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer, and my guest today is Connie Hubner. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. Connie is one of these people who makes Fairfield, Iowa an interesting place to live. She and I have both lived here for decades, and she's originally from Grand Rapids, is it?
Yes, born and raised in Grand Rapids,
Grand
Michigan.
Rapids, Michigan, and has a very interesting story to tell. And I didn't actually know much of the details of Connie's story until just this last week when I read something she had written about it. And here I've been living in the same town and been friends with her for years, and I thought, wow, this is really a treasure trove. So we're going to turn it into an interview. So, Connie, as I recall in the thing you wrote, you started out in more or less, was it college or childhood in your account of things you went through?
Well, my first spiritual experience, my big spiritual experience was college.
Yeah.
You know, my childhood was really quite wonderful, living in a small town and having a lot of freedom to explore and roam around and be in the country. But I had a social conscience at the time, even as a child, because I wanted to be the President of the United States when I grew up. But the reason I wanted to be president was because I was aware that the world was an uncomfortable place for many people, and I wanted to be able to do something about it. So my first thought was, I guess I'll have to become president to be able to do something.
It's not too late.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm doing something about it differently now, and I'm very pleased with what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But so anyway, it was in college when I first had a sort of a hit me over the head spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I actually was an atheist at the time. I had decided that, you know, that if God was going to have to prove himself to me if God existed. Mm-hmm. And so I was just enjoying my college life at a big university and was happy and having fun and so on. And one day I was in a field with a friend, just lying on my back, looking up at the sky. It was daytime. And I was looking up, as I looked up at the blue sky, I knew there were stars out there that I couldn't see. And so I thought, I'm going to try to look between those stars. And as I was just looking into this vast expanse of blue, and I just kept, it's almost like I was craning my neck to look between the stars as far out into the universe as I could. Something happened, and the simplest way to say it is I just became everything. I was the stars, I was the sky, I was the grass that I was lying on in the field. I just became one with everything. And I have no idea how long the experience lasted. Because when I finally sort of got up and looked around and saw my friend next to me, all I could say to him was, "We're one." Mm-hmm. And of course he kind of, you know, looked and said, "Oh yeah, well, that's great." You know, it didn't impress him that much. But I was like, "No, we are one." It was so striking to me. And still he wasn't, you know, he didn't really know what I was talking about. And keep in mind, this was, I believe it was the fall of 1968. Mm-hmm. So there were lots of, spirituality was just kind of becoming an interest. And you know, in terms of oneness and expansion and so on. The traditional spirituality had a pretty strong hold back then. So I realized, well, he doesn't understand what I'm talking about. And, you know, we went on with our day. I went back to my dorm, and was going to go to sleep that night. And I thought, I can't forget this. I don't want to go to sleep and then forget about this experience because it's so amazing.
And you were still having it.
And yes, yes, oh yeah.
8 hours later.
I was still having it. I mean, I was doing my usual things, but I was still experiencing my union with everything, my oneness. But I thought I might forget it when I went to sleep. So I wrote a note on my mirror. Actually, I just put a big number 1 on my mirror. So that in the morning when I woke up, I'd look in the mirror and I'd say, oh yeah, I'm one with everything. But the ridiculous thing is, there was no way I could forget that I was one with everything. It was like indelible. It was like falling into indelible ink. But it was invisible indelible ink. Nobody could see it except me. And it wasn't that I was seeing it, I was experiencing it. And it was actually a very enjoyable experience. I liked it.
So when you woke up the next morning,
I was
it
still
was still
experiencing
going on.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has never stopped since.
It has never stopped.
Yeah.
Even though I have tried to get rid of it, even. Not recently, I haven't tried.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate now the value of it. But back then, I thought I would try because I wanted to test it. I was, you know, scientifically researching it after a while.
You know, the thing I thought kind of funny and ironic is that the experience you started with is the state that many people on a spiritual path consider to be the goal. But for you, it was just the beginning.
Yeah.
And you went on from there. You
Right.
know, there was still plenty of territory to traverse,
right.
and still is.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So true. And one of the first things that I realized was it was absolutely ridiculous to be an atheist, because now I'm God. I'm experiencing myself as within the unity of all things, and everything just flip-flopped in my life. I would try to explain the experience to people, and they usually looked at me pretty strangely. And many of them suggested that I go see a psychiatrist, which, believe it or not, I did do. It didn't do much for the experience, and I realized that, you know, that wasn't the direction that I needed to go. People, when I would look at people and say, I'm one with you, often they would become very uncomfortable. It was like I was just being much too intimate.
Yeah.
And so I realized that didn't work. And basically I just started a quest of trying to find somebody else who was having the experience, because nobody I knew was having the experience. Nobody I knew could even knew what I was talking about. Although a lot of people, because this was academia, they said, well, there were philosophers who talked about this. So they would send me to different philosophers, which I would read avidly, and yes, they were talking about it, but they were dead. And I needed to find somebody who was alive that I could share, commune with in this way, consciously commune and share this experience with. It took me a while. It actually took me a while. I did a lot of seeking. I talked to a lot of people about it. I think it was about a year and a half later that I finally found one person who was having the experience. Well, during that next year, I started to avidly seek somebody who was having this experience of oneness. And because people didn't really know what I was talking about as an experience, I changed my language and I said, I've come up with this oneness theory, that everything is really one. And as a theory in academia, they could definitely accept it and talk about it, and we had lots of great conversations. But I kind of felt like I was hiding because I couldn't tell anyone. Yeah, and that's my experience all the time. I live with that. But that didn't work. Anytime I tried, it didn't work. So eventually I did graduate, because this happened in the fall of my senior year. The fall of my senior year. I ended up graduating and going to Boston, Massachusetts to work. And the person, person that I found there that I thought might be having the experience was Baba Ram Das, the former Richard Alpert. And he was giving talks in the Boston area. He had just finished coming back from meeting his guru in India. And his talks were fascinating. And one weekend, friends of mine were going up to Vermont, maybe it was New Hampshire, I think it was New Hampshire. And I heard that he had a family home. He'd been doing some weekend retreat up there with a group of his followers. And we happened to be in the vicinity, so I convinced my friends to drive over. And they were not into this the way I was, so I really had to do a lot of convincing. And I made the phone call to his house. I was just kind of bold. I was actually very bold in this search. I just was driven to find somebody else because I was either crazy, you know, and I knew I wasn't crazy, but I was very isolated. I felt, you know, I didn't have anybody to share this with. So anyway, I called him up. He said, come over. I got my friends to drive me there. And when we got to the farm, which is where his family farm in New Hampshire, nobody would get out of the car. So I, you know, said, all right, I'm going to go meet this man. And I got out, walked across the lawn, knocked on the back door, and he came out. He answered the door. And all I wanted to do was look into his eyes, because I had developed this test. The test was if somebody could hold my gaze. I mean, now in retrospect, the test seems kind of silly. But at the time, it was a very important test. If someone could hold my gaze and just, we could meet eyes, hold the gaze, and connect in that oneness and not shift the gaze, that person must be experiencing the oneness. So I had never found anyone. I'd been staring at people for a year and a half, and nobody had been able to hold my gaze. So anyway, so all I did was look at him. And I think I had had some words that I'd rehearsed, like, I hope you have a pleasant journey, something like that. And but he was able to hold my gaze, and we just, you know, had this silent exchange, but a very powerful exchange, because it was the meeting of consciousness. It was the meeting of wholeness, the meeting of oneness, which is an incredible experience, you know, to have with anyone. So he met my gaze, and then we embraced. I remember hearing him breathe, and I think he was practicing a breathing technique, but at the time I didn't even know what that was. And then he said, I knew he was going back to India the next day to be with his master again. So, but anyway, I had met one person, and that one person that I'd met, far from me being able to exchange more and be with him more and even talk about it, was leaving the next day. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but at least I had met him. And
you just said, have a nice trip or something.
Yeah, I said, have a nice trip back to India. And, you know, it was all this nonverbal experience that was so significant. And he said thank you, and, you know, it was a very polite verbal exchange, but on the deep levels it was a very profound experience. He recognized me as having the experience, I recognized him, and that was really what I was looking for, because it gave me the confidence that, okay, I'm not alone in this. So anyway, I left, and it took me a while to find somebody else, you know, who I could experience that with on a regular basis. But in Boston at the time, I was still talking about my oneness theory to people, and someone said, a friend of mine said, go to the Transcendental Meditation Center. Sometimes when we're all practicing the meditation together, she said, I feel at one with everyone in the group. So I immediately went off to the Transcendental Meditation Center, learned TM, and it wasn't until the last night of the checking, the third night follow-up meeting, that they talked about cosmic consciousness, that I suddenly tuned in. I thought, that's what I'm looking for. So I raised my hand because I could tell the teacher wasn't experiencing what he was talking about. And so I said, do you know anyone that experiences this? And he said, well, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi experiences at least cosmic consciousness. And then he went on to explain that was just the beginning of the growth of consciousness. So immediately my next task was to find a way to meet Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And it took me another year and a half, really about a year, to figure out how I was going to meet him, which was to go to a preliminary teacher training course. And I did do that. It was in Amherst, Massachusetts. I believe by then it was 1971.
I was there.
I might have met you.
Yeah, you might.
And we, anyway, so it was great. Maharishi was, there were thousands of people there. It was, as I said, a preliminary course for training teachers, which I was very interested in because having learned TM, I then had followed up on a lot of the advanced courses that were available and weekend courses and really liked everything that I had heard and was planning to become a teacher of TM. But the big thing was I had to test Maharishi. I had to make sure that he was experiencing the oneness because he talked about it, but I needed to look in his eyes. So I finally got my chance, and I had taken an advanced technique, and he was checking the techniques. And so I got in line to go up and sit with him for a few minutes to get my technique checked. I don't know if I should tell the little incident about,
Sure.
about my dress.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, that's kind of funny. Go ahead.
Because here Maharishi was a monk from India, and anyway, I had this mini dress on at the time. It was the summer of 1971. I had this mini dress, and I didn't have time to go back and change and put on something that I thought might be more appropriate to meet a monk in. And so I just had this little mini dress, and I went up and sat by him, and my biggest concern was that the dress was so short, and I kept trying to pull the dress down, but then the neck would come down. So then I would try to pull the neck up, and the dress would come up. So that was the first few minutes of my experience of sitting with him. I was trying to figure out pulling the dress up and pulling the dress down and what to do. Finally, I gave up and just looked at him, looked him in the eyes. And it was just powerful, is all I can say. I mean, I just got lost in his gaze. I just fell into this, unfathomable, infinite source of all of life. And in fact, I was the one that turned away. And I remember turning away because it was like he showed me so much more than I was experiencing at the time, and I just got pulled into it. So it was very, very profound, and I definitely signed on to teach TM and help other people have that experience that I was having, the experience that Maharishi had really shown me he was having. And I spent the next 20 years as a TM teacher, and I learned a tremendous amount about consciousness, as you well know, all about the ancient Vedic tradition, the growth and development of consciousness that's available for human beings. It was just fascinating for me. And I loved every minute of it. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah. If I think of any questions,
Okay.
you're doing good.
Okay.
Usually I talk too much, so this is nice.
Well, so after a while, anybody who's investigated TM knows that TM was presented in a very scientific vein. And there was lots of scientific research verifying the validity of the TM technique. And as teachers, we talked in a scientific way. It was just the way the whole thing was languaged. It was about stress release. It was about, definitely, we talked about consciousness, but we explained it in scientific terms, and that it could be measured and validated and all of these things, which really helped it be accepted by the, by the general population, as it was very well accepted. So, but what happened to me was during that time is I was continuing to grow in the depth of my experience of oneness, of unbounded consciousness, and I started to get this yearning to meet God. And Maharishi talked about this. He talked about shaking hands with God. And he frequently, as you know, would say, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Well, of course, Jesus said that, and I had heard it from Jesus, but somehow now that I was having an inward experience of something that certainly was very deep and I could even say heaven-like, I wanted more of it. So what started to grow was this development of my heart. And I was just, in my private moments, I would just be praying to God and, saying, how can I know you? How can I meet you? How can I,
Which is almost verbatim what Maharishi said in that lecture,
Right.
Yeah.
The shaking hands with God lecture?
The person sees the artist's work and thinks, oh, is this so beautiful? I've got to meet the artist. And the yearning to meet the artist grows stronger and stronger and stronger until eventually the artist hears that there's this guy who really appreciates my work, and he, from his side, comes to meet his admirer.
Right. That's right. So I was in that process of yearning, and it made it very difficult for me to talk about this objective scientific, experience of the divine. I wanted to go in and talk about the devotional aspect. But of course I certainly respected the way TM was being taught, and I taught the way I was trained to teach as a TM teacher.
One question that occurs to me that people might ask is, if you were experiencing everything as one, then who was this God you wanted to meet, and where was this God? It seems that, if everything is one, then God is already included within that oneness, so what more is there to find?
Great question. Yes. So I had met God, the omnipresent,
Unmanifest.
the unmanifest omnipresence of God. And I was flowing and moving in that sort of that unmanifest, omnipresent, all-knowingness field. But what I was wanting was a personal God, a personal relationship with God. I wanted to talk to God. I wanted to ask questions to God. I wanted an internal, constant exchange with God.
And so still there's a sense that God is someone that I could talk with and ask questions of, who is in some sense different from that unbounded field which I know myself to be. Because otherwise one could ask questions and talk to that unbounded field, if that's God, and why not just do that? What is one seeking for that is in some sense different from that unbounded field?
I was seeking a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And the relationship with the unbounded is is very abstract. It's like a relationship with being. I wanted the personal relationship with God.
I'm reminded of what Maharishi said. He said, prayers to the absolute are a waste of time. He said, it's like a rock. You know,
Right,
it's like,
right.
Who hears those prayers? You know, so there must be a personal aspect of God to whom one could appeal.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that's where I was. I wanted this personal relationship, I wanted to find and talk to and engage with the personal aspect of God. And it was almost not even it wasn't sort of an intellectual choice. It was more of a yearning from my heart. Because intellectually I knew, like, okay, I have God.
Yeah, like the things I was just saying.
Yeah, but my heart kept moving me, saying, there's more. There's a more sublime experience in the play with the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I was looking for that, and what happened is, what happened? I couldn't talk about it with my friends, with my TM friends. And I again started to feel kind of isolated and alone, like originally I had felt, you know, when I was the only one I knew having the oneness experience.
Had you even told your TM friends that you had been having this oneness experience since college, or was that a little bit, did that even fall on deaf ears?
Yeah, no, I didn't tell them.
They would think you were pretentious or something.
Right, yeah. No, I didn't tell anyone. I just, in the TM organization, we just didn't talk about experiences that much.
Yeah.
And if anyone did say that they were having some enlightened experience, it was kind of sometimes suspect.
Yeah.
Like, how can you say that? So I kept very, very quiet about my experience. Mm-hmm. And even my need to find God, I just didn't talk about it much. I don't even think I talked about it at all. I was going to church. I started going to churches, and I kind of didn't really find much there. I investigated other religious, you know, areas, and I was very, obviously the Eastern philosophies I was very comfortable with, but I wasn't. I didn't come from that cultural tradition, so it was the you know, the worship and the experience was somewhat foreign. And I thought it must be in Christianity, or Christianity wouldn't have survived for so long, even though I was unable to find it in talking to different ministers and religious people. So again, I felt sort of on my own in my search for God. Now I was searching for the personal God. And so here's what I did. By that time I had had a child, mm-hmm. and she was an infant at the time. And
so what year are we talking about now? Just chronology
we must be talking about 1986.
Okay. What year did you and David get married?
Oh, we got married in 79.
Okay.
So anyway, now my daughter would take a nap every day, and during her nap, I made this conscious decision that I was not going to. I had been in some ways seeking outside of myself. I'd been talking to religious people. I'd been reading books on God, and I had been looking, you know, in the book or in the conversation or in the lecture that I went to for God and for other people's experience of God. And I realized that I couldn't look out there. That was an experience that belonged to someone else. I had to find it within myself if I were going to believe that the kingdom of heaven was within me. Mm-hmm. So I decided to just go in, close my eyes while my daughter was napping, and look for the kingdom of heaven. And so first day that I decided to do this, she was taking her nap, and I went into my room and closed my eyes and was sort of sitting there with, where's the kingdom? Nothing happened. You know, it was just blank. everything.
And this
was
is
quiet.
obviously a different approach than your regular TM meditation that you were doing. Yeah.
Right. I didn't go in there
You
and
weren't using a
meditate.
mantra or anything. You're just like
No.
sitting there with the eyes closed with this intention to find
Right.
the kingdom of heaven.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and I would just sit there and look. I would look from the inside.
Yeah.
And
And I'm sure you had very blissful, sublime experiences during meditation, but somehow those were not quite the kingdom of heaven as you were seeking it.
no.
You knew there was something
I-
more than
yeah.
those.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I did have some very excellent, wonderful experiences in meditation with lots of, the welling up of lots of what I would call love, lots of, just incredible peace. But that,
And you also had the 24/7 oneness
yeah,
as like
yeah.
a foundation.
Right.
But you knew there was something more.
So that wasn't what I was looking for. I mean, I don't know exactly what I was looking for.
But you knew that there was.
But that wasn't it.
Right.
I mean, I knew the experience of the infinite wholeness, the abstract presence of being, very intimately. And now in retrospect, when I closed my eyes and I went into the room, that's really what I was sitting in, is that abstract being. And I would just sit there and I would, it would get a little boring actually. And so, but the next day I'd go back and I would do it again. So finally I started asking some questions. I started saying, okay, Jesus, you said the kingdom of heaven is within. Show it to me. Where is it? Again, nothing happened. I didn't get any answer, nothing. So I started asking for it, though, at least, and I went on for a month or maybe 6 weeks, maybe even 2 months like this. The one thing I do have to say is I was persistent.
Yeah, I was
in
going
this.
to say, you're fairly stick to it.
I felt that if Maharishi and Jesus said the kingdom of heaven was within, I did believe them. And so I was going to have to find it for myself. So one day, as I was sitting there looking for the kingdom of heaven, I saw a little sparkle of light. And it was the first thing that I had seen in my inner vision that was at all. And so I immediately started to watch that light. And the light seemed, interestingly enough, when I watched the light seemed to grow.
Now, not to distract you or sidetrack you, because we'll get right back to this, but you had been, if it's 1987 or something, or 86, you had been practicing the TM City program for a number of years.
Yes.
And had there not been, and we don't need to elaborate too much on what the TM City program is, but it's sort of an advanced program that TM people learn, and there are all these various cities described by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, many of which involve inner visions of various kinds, things that you would know or experience inwardly that you wouldn't ordinarily know or experience. So had you been successful with those?
I don't know how to define successful, because I did have experiences with them. And I don't think I really understood what they were, which is interesting because I understand them really well now. But at that time, I didn't really understand what was happening, or even what was supposed to happen, except that you did it and there was a response. And which I did do, and I had a response. And sometimes they were great responses, sometimes, not so much.
But none of them were the kingdom of heaven.
Well, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have experiences of the different siddhis on the subtle, but they were actually satisfying, but they weren't what I was seeking, or I guess I could even say expecting.
Yeah.
It's always a little dangerous to have expectations, but they weren't what I was expecting either. And so I wanted something that I could own, that was more my own, actually, and more intimate to me.
And more God-related.
That's right. Definitely God-related.
Yeah, I mean, the city's, various things, friendliness, compassion, happiness, knowledge of the cosmic regions, different things like that, but not a whole lot about God.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I saw this little light, and I started to watch the little light, and it would move and flow and so on. And to make a long story short, once I saw the light for the first time, I started looking for it every day. And so as I did it day after day, their tremendous light started to be revealed to me. I still didn't call that the kingdom of heaven, but it was really like somebody had rolled me a flashlight in this darkness of my inner world. And now I had something to use to look for the kingdom of heaven. I had a tool to use. And what I noticed as I worked with the light is that I started to feel really good. And that actually my life started to change. That if I were unhappy, if I had a problem with, my child, had one child at that time, or my husband, or anything in my life, if I poured light into it, if I increased the light in it, the problem would shift, and I would find solutions.
So you were experiencing an inner light, but somehow by virtue of this experience of inner light, you were able to pour light into another person or situation.
Well, that happened kind of gradually, because first of all, I was just experiencing the light. Then I got the idea that maybe I could pour the light into myself when I was outside of this looking for the kingdom of heaven. I could just do it when I was, washing the dishes or, driving my car. And I did, and I found it had a tremendous effect on me. Then I got the idea that, well, maybe if, my husband came home from work and he was complaining about something that had happened at the office, if I poured light into him, it might change things. And it did. So I started to work with the power of light to change situations in myself and in my environment. And so that was great. I mean, I started to feel like I started to feel mastery over the universe, actually, but that I could change things just by increasing light in a particular area. So this whole process, I still do this. I still close my eyes and ask for, to be shown things within, and I'm shown a lot of things. But in the beginning, I uncovered these, what I now call vibrational tools. And I actually teach them. On my website, I have many that people can download and use for themselves, and I'll teach them how to use them, because it's a way, the divine light being just the first one I uncovered. It's a way that you don't have to feel that you're a victim of circumstances, that you can actually, by changing things at the level of the energy, which is light, change outcomes, which is really, that's something that is quite fascinating to me right now. But after working with light for a while, I was welling up with divine love, and I realized that love is the other side of light, and that I could actually work with the energy of divine love. The whole thing really just unfolded as I learned about all of these, what I call divine tools and techniques. And they are I know this now. At the time that I was uncovering them, I didn't really know what they are. Now I realize the divine light that I found, the divine love, the divine truth, and the divine grace that I uncovered are all qualities of God. And that qualities of the divine were being revealed to me. And as they were revealed to me, I started to perceive God through having these qualities displayed to me.
So you set out to find the kingdom of heaven, and you found light, love, grace,
Truth.
different qualities. And so did you feel in finding those that you had or were finding, had found or were finding the kingdom of heaven, that, you know, these were the sort of the attributes of it?
Not at first.
Okay.
Not at first. I was just learning. I was definitely in learning mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would work with one of these tools. I would try it out mostly on my friends and family, and I would find that transformations would occur.
Did they know you were trying anything on them, or you were just doing this subtly?
At first I did it subtly, and then I just started telling them,
Yeah.
you're in a bad mood, well, let me try this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would start to pour in divine light or divine love, or I actually developed a sequence that I would use. And so some first light, then love, then truth, then grace, and they did notice a shift.
Yeah. Would you both be sitting eyes closed while you were doing this process, pouring light in?
Would we be?
I mean, is that the
Pretty
form?
much.
Did you kind of formalize it? So, okay, let's sit down and do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would sit down,
Yeah.
and what would happen was very naturally our eyes would start to close.
Right.
But it doesn't have to. But because these qualities are divine qualities, they take you to this subtle level where the divine resides.
Mm-hmm.
So that then we would sort of want to go within and want to experience that subtle level.
Yeah.
So anyway, I need a drink of water.
Sure.
Well, I could go through all this. There were many steps.
Yeah, we have time. Just to.
Okay.
We have plenty of time.
We have.
Yeah.
The best thing, oh, thank you, that started to happen was, as I told you, I started to say early on, Jesus, if there's a kingdom of heaven, show it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I started to realize that Jesus was there. And this sort of came as a surprise to me. Because I would keep saying, you talk about the kingdom. You know, I kept talking to Jesus.
Yeah, you were petitioning him in particular,
right,
so therefore.
because he was the one who said it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I thought, well, you said it, so you show it to me. And
Put your money where your mouth is.
and so exactly. So what I started to notice was that when I would say, Jesus, show me this, that there was not only was there the light, but there was a presence. I would feel a sense, an energy, a vibration that I started to identify as Jesus. In fact, I started is this Jesus? And this was quite a few months after I had dealt with the light and the love and the truth and the grace, and I would get like a positive response. And I have to tell people that I have really learned how to, I guess I call it read energy. And I learned through this process of my own how to perceive energy and and energy has a lot to say, a lot to tell people. Light, love, truth, and grace are just four aspects of divine energy that carries information, knowledge. And if you go into it, you can get divine knowledge. All of this was being sort of revealed to me from within on a regular basis. But anyway, at one point I decided, I felt the presence of Jesus, and every time I would say the name, a stronger presence would come. And so I started saying, Jesus, are you there? And I'd get another, big blast of energy. And so I kind of, what happened was I got into a conversation with the the energy of Jesus. And I started to learn how to interpret the energy into English words. It was like reading a foreign language, and the energy was the language was energy. So I got into a dialogue with Jesus, basically, and it was incredible. It was just amazing. So I would ask a question and I would get an energy answer, and then I would settle into the energy. I would sort of literally transcend into the energy, and information would come to me from Jesus. And so we started, and at first it was like, I love you. I mean, it was just very loving, wonderful communication. And then I would ask another question, simple questions. Who are you? And I would get a response from that. And so now things were really getting exciting. Now the kingdom of heaven was becoming much closer.
Yeah, you're really talking to somebody.
Right, right. So, so for a long time, I would go into what I would do is I would prepare myself by bringing in all of the divine tools. I would fill myself with light, fill myself with divine love, center myself in divine truth, and allow the divine grace. And I would do it. I had by that time written these things out in verbal form, so that I could even read it from a paper, and I would, get into this place which I was beginning to call now the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. And then I would ask for Jesus to come forth. And I want to tell you, I was not a religious person. I mean, in the traditional sense. I was spiritual. I mean, I was very magnetized by spirituality. But even talking to Jesus seemed a little funny to me because of the way traditional religion talked about it, that I could never relate to. But now I was experiencing it within me. And so I would, have some conversation with Jesus, and it was always very loving. And many times I would just need to know how to handle my life, What do I do? How do I pay this bill? Is it wise for us to move into a new house? How do I handle this disagreement that I had with my friend? I mean, just very ordinary, simple things that me and my personal life needed to know to feel comfortable and to move forward. And I got answers, and when I acted on those answers, things smoothed out. My friends and I stopped, the arguments dissolved, and whatever discontent was there was resolved. So it was very practical. It was extremely practical. But I didn't tell anyone about this because it just felt too personal, really, too personal. And I didn't want to be challenged. I didn't, it was like, are you sure? And I didn't want to go into my intellect about it. It was all on the level of the heart. And so I just kept it very silently. I did share it with my husband, and he was completely respectful. And I just kept going on like that. And then I kept getting, after a year or two, I kept getting an inner message, you need to help. You need to share this with other people. You need to, and that was a huge step for me, because one, I didn't think that my TM friends would take to it very, very well, because it just was so out of the mold of what we had been doing. And I was nervous about doing it, but because I got so I did start sharing it with a few friends, just personal friends, and they loved it. I actually started, they could ask Jesus questions, and then I would say, okay, Jesus, what's your answer? And then I would tell them, this is what I'm getting. And they found it extremely illuminating and uplifting. So I just did that for friends and family for a number of years. And then again, I got another boost from the inside saying, you need to offer this to more people, and which I resisted for a couple years. But finally, the push from the inside to share what I had uncovered and discovered with more people was so intense. It was almost, to hold it back was becoming painful. So I just put a little blurb in the local newspaper, prayer assistance, because I didn't know what else to call it. So, and 3 people called me from, I put my phone number, and from those 3 people, it grew word of mouth. And pretty soon my whole day was giving what I at the time called prayer assistance. And people were having, they were having really great experiences using the tools, the vibrational tools, the divine light, the divine love, and divine grace. And I started to develop more vibrational tools as I worked with people, because I realized people had blocks in their energy. I realized I had blocks in my energy, and I needed to find ways and means to clear the discord at deep levels of my system.
Are these tools something you can explain in the course of an interview like this, or do they really have to go to your website and study a more detailed thing? It would sort of be inappropriate to try to explain exactly how to do it here.
Well, no, I can explain it. I call them now, after all these years, I call them Divine Mother's vibrational tools. And the first one is Divine Light. And it reads, and people can download a print version of it. It reads something like this: Divine light is pouring into me now. Divine light is flooding me now. Divine light is filling me. Again and again, I am filled with divine light. It goes on like that. Or
it's like a prayer or an affirmation.
Yeah, or yes.
Yeah.
But what's happening when you're saying it is you are actually telling light what to do. And I could say it for you. I could say you are being filled with divine light. Divine light is pouring into you. It's filling your heart. It's bathing you in its wonder, in its power, in its strength. You're being inundated by divine light. But what people don't realize is by saying that, light actually is coming into you. That's where the energy aspect is.
On some subtle level it is, even if you don't notice
right.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now
I'm
most
kind of a dullard.
I don't believe that. Now most people that do this with me, and I do many private sessions with people. I have a process that I go through, and that I set up. I first call in many divine beings.
Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Divine beings and all this? Or?
Well, we don't have to get. There's
I want
only
to get
one.
into that.
There's only one that just has many names.
Okay.
But yeah, we will get into that. But just getting back to what you just said. So divine light is one of the vibrational tools. Divine love, divine grace. I have a vibrational tool that breaks the subtle structures of untruth that we've created with our thoughts. Every time we have a thought, there's a vibration that goes along with it, and if it's a negative thought, we create a negative vibration. And if we think those thoughts many times, we build up these negative vibrations, and they actually constrict the way we express ourselves. They hold us to a small concept of who we are, even a negative concept of who we are. So one of the tools I've developed is to break those structures, literally breaking us out of the energy cage that we've built around us that inhibits the full expression of of who we are, our divine self.
And just to reemphasize, people don't need you for this. They can learn these on their own and just do them on their own, right?
Yes.
I mean, you could be a facilitator if they happen to be able to sit with you or Skype with you or something, but ultimately they can learn these things and do them as a daily routine or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I recommend that they do that. In
Right.
fact, I'm actually in the process of finishing up a book with a list of all the vibrational tools that I'm hoping people can use and just read. Just reading them, things change.
Now, you know how it was with the TM City program when we learned it? Maharishi said, well, you really need to establish consciousness pretty well before this will work for you. And in fact, when he first taught it, you know, he had us go like on a 6-month meditation course, and we were like doing long meditations for 3 months before he even gave us any techniques or anything. So with this thing, is the efficacy of them really dependent upon how lively and how fertile a person's consciousness is, how well developed it is? I mean, here you have had this this unity thing since college, but most people are a little bit more calcified and restricted than that.
I would say no. I would say that anyone can do this and notice a change immediately. And I want to say the reason, I feel that the reason that these methods, these vibrational tools that I've uncovered are working now is because the world is different now than when you and I first started Transcendental Meditation back in the 70s, early 70s. And that, you know, there's been a tremendous preparation that's taken place, and now there's so much consciousness available that these tools and techniques that I'm using, that I'm offering people to use, and of course that I am using myself, are really, they work. They're very, people who are drawn to using them find them very effective.
So even if a person has PTSD or maybe drug problems or something, they're kind of a stressed out person, they'll be able to use these tools and
yes.
get benefits.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the beauties of them.
Would you suggest or recommend that they supplement these tools with something like TM or some form of meditation? Does that add an extra engine to it, or make the tools more effective?
Does. If they're doing any kind of spiritual practice, it definitely, you know, augments the whole process.
Okay.
And of course, the most powerful spiritual practice is this whole process of going into the source. And of course, TM takes people into the source. These tools take people into the source, actually. And I have one of them is the softening technique, which is a series of having you, we'll just do it right now, soften in the heart.
Do you want me to close my eyes and...
Sure. Soften in the heart. Soften in your throat. Soften in the brow, the third eye. Soften at the crown, at the top of the head. Soften at the base of your spine. Soften in the pelvic area. Soften in the solar plexus. And again in your heart. And then again in your throat, soften. Soften in the brow and the crown and the base of the spine. And again in your pelvic area, solar plexus, and the heart. What I recommend is that people start with this softening exercise. The softening exercise is obviously the attention is on the main energy centers of the body.
Yeah. So when you say soften, I mean, basically all I was able to do is just bring my attention to the different areas you mentioned. And, you know, there's a sort of there's an influence when you bring your attention to something.
Right.
Yeah.
And the intention is to soften. The attention is on the
As
part
opposed
of
to
the body.
constriction or tension
Right.
or something, just
And the
relaxation.
intention is to soften.
Right.
Well, that relaxation moves you through the rigid boundaries of these different energy centers. So, and what it does is it's moving you into the more boundlessness. So by repeating it, you're helping a person get into that unboundedness. And I will do the softening for 10 minutes when I'm, working with someone or working with a group. I do a lot of free webcasts, and anybody seeing this can attend a free webcast and experience the process.
We'll explain later how to tune
Yeah.
into those. Yeah.
Yeah, because really the experience is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. I'm talking about my story here, but my story, every single step of my story was a footstep into deeper experience.
Right.
And that's really what to me is real. If the experience is real, is there, then you know it. You don't have to intellectualize it, but you know it from your core.
Sure.
So that's what I'm trying to give people, is an experience from their core of union with God, basically, of connection with the divine. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And so obviously what you're implying is that when enough softening has taken place and dissolving and all that, then naturally the connection with the divine begins to be more experiential.
Right.
That it's clouded
More
or
obvious.
occluded by all these sort of hidden tensions and
That's right.
crud.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because it's there already, it's just that it's been covered up.
Right.
And so these techniques that I've uncovered, that I offer people, are just ways to, one, enliven the divine with the divine qualities, and two, break the blockages with the clear. I have a bunch of clearing tools, clearing with the break. If there's a block, you can, because we are divine beings in truth, when we say to a blockage, go, it has to go. As long as we're commanding from our divine authority. So I teach people how to clear the blockages in their system by just connecting with their divine authority and saying to it, go into the light.
I was never a very good visualizer, Like I never felt like I was getting any noticeable predicted results when I did the TM City program. And, when I go through something like that, or, I imagine if I were to sit and do all your techniques with you, there would just be this sort of there would be a sort of a sense of moving my attention here and there, and it would be just a sort of almost a subtle conceptual notion of breaking this or telling that to go. But it's all very vague to me. It's not like really vivid and clear. Do you find that among the people you work with, there's a range with people like me on one end of the scale, and others, much more clearly, cognizing or experiencing the things that are going on?
No, no. I find that actually vague is good.
Yeah.
Because vague means more subtle. And I'm trying to get people to experience more subtle. I'm not trying to get them to have a clear mental experience. So what you're calling vague just means a more
it's like a faint
fundamental
feeling
experience.
level of the thing,
Right.
kind of.
Right.
But, yeah, okay.
And you see, people aren't used to focusing on their vague, faint feeling level. In fact, we tend to dismiss it. And really, that vague, faint feeling level is what's even more real than what we're cognizing with our intellect.
Well, that's reassuring, because I'm kind of a pro at
Yeah.
vague, faint feeling. But I'm always kind of like hearing people talk about these vivid experiences, and I think, no, I'm not having that.
No. See, what happens as you bring your attention within and start to notice at first just some vague, faint feeling level,
Yeah.
is as you fall into it, or soften into it, to use that technique, as you soften into it, it becomes more real. It
Yeah.
becomes more concrete, because you're softening into your subtle experience of life. And we all, including me in the early days, have we dismiss that subtle experience of life. And really, that subtle experience of life is the most significant. It's the most important. And so I actually am trying to get people to notice their subtle experiences, their vague, faint feeling level, and give it some credence.
Yeah.
And not just, the intellect can so easily dismiss it and say, oh, well, that wasn't real. You know, it probably is real. And if you pay more attention to it, it's going to become more real than anything that your intellect can conjure up. And so that's what I actually am training people to do, is pay attention to what's happening on the subtlest levels, even the subtlest level of creation, where the unmanifest is manifesting into form. That subtlest level of creation is incredibly important. That's where the divine resides. And so if you start paying attention to that, as even as a faint feeling or as a vague abstract thing, it's going to start to become more concrete. And you're going to start perceiving, you're going to start having divine perception, really. And that's one of the things that I actually am trying to help people realize, that you just have to get more subtle, more quiet, more internally focused to have divine perception, because it's all happening. It's all happening, and we just aren't noticing it. So a lot of the techniques that I do help you notice what's happening on subtle levels.
Yeah. I feel like even after 45 plus years of, regular spiritual practice, hours a day without fail, there's still, there's a real nice, profound 24/7 thing established, but at the same time, I'm very acutely aware that there are still blocks, blocks in the head, blocks in the heart, perhaps other centers in the body. There's, and sometimes I feel like, God, just rip me open, pulverize me, dissolve this. Whatever it is that's kind of still blocking after all this time, I would really like it to go. I talk to a lot of people who just conceptualize all this, and they say, oh, it's all oneness and all this stuff about, levels and blocks and God and all that. It's silly nonsense, but they're just they're in the head. They're just conceptualizing
That's
oneness.
right.
They haven't even perhaps begun to fathom the experiential dimension of it.
Yeah.
And I kind of harp on that a bit in a lot of interviews, that there's this, lifetime experiential exploration that one really has to engage in. And maybe lifetime's experiential exploration is not just a matter of conceptualizing what Ramana Maharshi talked about and then feeling like you're on his level or something.
That's true.
Anyway, I'm rambling a bit, but what do you have to say to all that?
Well, I have a lot to say. The biggest thing that I want to say, though, and the thing that my work emphasizes, is moving into the heart. Out of the mental concepts and into the heart, into the perception of the heart. And for one, the perception of the heart is clear if you give it a chance. We're constantly being trained to override the heart perception with our mind. I mean, that's what the Western society and the way we were raised is all about. But the heart really that's where the true knowledge is. That's really where the divine is. That's where the Divine Mother is. I haven't gotten to how I discovered Divine Mother.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about Divine Mother. because that's the main focus of my work now, is the Divine Mother. But the Divine Mother resides in the heart. And the Divine Mother is the creator. You can call it Mother, Father, God. There, I explain that when I mean Divine Mother, I'm not leaving out the Father God. They're one. It's just that the Divine Mother is resurging at this time on the planet because of the tremendous need for the qualities of the mother, the love, the nurturing, the nourishment, the tremendous compassion. So now God is coming forth as Mother God to unite her children, to bring the people back together.
But about heart, I mean, a
This
lot
is
of
all
people
about
have talked about that. You know, Ramana Maharshi talked about Atma Vijnana, or self-inquiry, as being a probing or exploration in that area. And you know, the Chandogya Upanishad has this beautiful thing about how all the stars and the winds and everything is there, and you know, I don't know, I can't do justice to it, but so you're talking about kind of an energetic center where the attention should dwell, or which should be awakened or enlivened a whole lot more when you say heart?
Definitely should be awakened and enlivened a lot more. And one of the ways to awaken it and enliven it, one of the techniques that I offer is, I call it the heart exercise, which is simply breathing into the heart. Putting your attention here
As you breathe.
As you breathe, bringing the breath in from the outside directly into the heart as well as down the throat, and letting your awareness be in this heart energy center, not just the heart organ.
Yeah.
And then training yourself really from moving from here, from the heart, rather than from the head. Now the mind and the heart need to integrate, but the way things have been is the mind has dominated the heart, actually pushed it aside. And so a lot of the amazing knowledge that the heart is capable of giving us has been ignored and just pushed aside. So by breathing into that, we start, one of the things when we breathe into it, we'll notice we have blocks in that area, which the breath can open up. By breathing into the blockage, you can dissolve it.
So as an actual practice, you would recommend people sit for 5, 10, 20 minutes or whatever, and just with eyes closed, have the attention on the heart, and breathe in.
Yes. Yeah, breathe into the heart, and then notice what you're noticing.
Whatever sensations you may feel. Or
yeah, whatever. A sensation, you might notice a pain.
A burning.
You notice a burning?
A little bit.
Breathe
right now,
into
I noticed a little subtle kind of, last couple of days also, just some subtle burning sensation.
Oh, so then I would say breathe into it. Just, you know, preferably with eyes closed, so you can really focus the power of your attention there, because where your attention is where your consciousness goes.
Now, a lot of times I notice sensations more in my head, and I spend a lot of time in front of the computer focusing on minute details, and I'll notice a tightness or a tension, or even a sort of a feeling of, you know, kind of like a kind of a feeling in my head, and so I'll think, all right, well, I should have the attention here to soothe and heal that, and so there'll be a predominance of my time spent doing that. But if during meditation,
I would say, even if the pain is in your head, breathe into your heart. By breathing into your head, you can get a little top heavy, but if you breathe into your heart, you'll actually find that it'll take care of the head. It'll take care of the head. Yes, because the heart, you know, it's the center chakra, you know, of the main physical chakras. So by breathing into that, and whatever has been compromised in the heart can cause pain in other parts of the body.
So it's kind of like a master switch.
That's right.
On a fuse box.
It totally is.
Yeah.
So breathe into the heart. In fact, when you're finished with the computer, if you could just sit there and breathe into your heart for 10 minutes, a lot of that mental tension will dissipate. And notice what you're noticing when you notice the burning that you just talked about. That's an imbalance.
Right.
That's an imbalance of the energy flow. So as you breathe into it, the breath carries the life force, and that life force will balance out that burning sensation.
Now, when you sit with eyes closed, the breath gets very subtle and almost just a very faint thing like that. Are you saying that one should just let that be the breathing, or should one consciously exaggerate the breath somewhat?
I wouldn't exaggerate it,
You
but
know,
I would
take
just
deeper breaths
take
and-
normal breaths.
Normal breaths.
Normal. The breath might soften just because you're used to when you close your eyes, the breath softening. And that's okay. But if nothing much is happening, just breathe more strongly. Because the stronger the breath, the more power goes in
So like
there.
if you're just sitting there, mind starts to wander, whatever.
Just bring it back.
Then breathe more strongly into the heart.
Bring it back. In fact, I have a digital download of me guiding someone into the heart.
So you can just play that.
So
and listen
people
to
could
it,
just play that. I think it's 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that would help someone. Some people use this heart exercise, as I call it, as a meditative practice.
Right.
They're just breathing into the heart for the 20, 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets them very settled and very centered.
Yeah.
But the heart is the number one most important place that I encourage people to move from, to heal. Important to heal the heart. The heart has had so much wounding in this life on earth that there's a lot of pain in the heart that needs to be dissolved, and breathe into it. And then the other thing is, this is where the Divine Mother resides, is in the heart. This is where your true self is also, as united with the divine. So we're enlivening and awakening our true self. We're awakening the divine relationship when you move into the heart and breathe into the heart. The heart is the treasure trove of our life, really. And another thing, the heart is your center. When people get thrown, the mind can go anywhere. It can rationalize anything, you know. But if you come to the heart will tell you the truth. And so, again, another value of breathing into the heart is, once you get through all of the layers of pain and masking and so on, you're going to hear the truth. The heart will guide you in any important decision. And keep breathing in until you're certain that you've got the divine answer.
How many people do you know who've gotten through all the layers of pain and masking? I mean, there must be lots of layers, you know?
There are a lot of layers, but you know, they unwind quickly when you're focusing there. I mean, it may have taken, you know, years to build up the pain, but it can be unwound in a matter of months with regular, you know, focus. I have seen miracles happen with people that I've worked with regularly. And just a tremendous clarity. I believe personally that our last stresses reside in the heart, which is, and they
By
reside.
stresses, you mean like vasanas or you know, impressions which block us from the divine.
And the deep core issues, even the belief in separation from God, the belief in separation itself, is held in the heart area. And so by breathing into that, I'll enlarge the heart area to include the solar plexus, because a lot of our individual belief systems are in the solar plexus and connect to the heart. But it's very, very empowering to begin to develop the heart. What else? One of the things that I want to get to is how I connected with Divine Mother.
Yeah.
Is this a good moment?
Yeah, this is fine.
Okay.
And any other details, you know, that you want to get to? I mean, at some point you were talking about, you know, chasing away bad subtle beings that are hassling us and all kinds of things. So weave it all into the story, however, in whatever sequence you wish.
Okay. All right. Well, so I was talking to Jesus, and getting personal advice for my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was encouraged to.
And you never saw him like the guy with the beard and all that. It was more like this light, which had a kind of a conscious persona presence to it, and
Yes.
and you got positive reinforcement whenever you tried to confirm that was Jesus. The light would get brighter.
Right. Yes, and the presence, the energy presence of Jesus would get brighter.
Yeah.
Some people are very visual and do see.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, I have always been more tactile.
Yeah.
So the developed sense that I have is the sense of touch. And so when I feel I can touch Jesus with the Jesus energy.
Yeah.
And to me, that's as real as somebody whose visual sense is developed and they see a form with a face and, beard and clothes and all of that.
Yeah, different people have different senses more predominant.
That's right.
Right.
Other people have knowingness really strongly developed, and they just know without a doubt that this is Jesus. I am in the presence of Jesus. So my first experiences of the divine were always from this tactile sense of feeling a presence, sensing of energy.
Yeah.
However, as I've developed, my visual now is starting to grow. So I will have visual perceptions of God in different forms.
Incidentally, if the emphasis on Jesus seems a little Christian to people who have who acquired a childhood distaste of Christianity through various experiences, I mean, I've interviewed half a dozen people who had similar experiences with Ramana Maharshi. If you want to have the Eastern route, who he came to them before they even knew he existed, or they kind of get this inner messaging from some being who identifies itself or whom they feel is Ramana Maharshi. So it seems like the divine can kind of communicate with us through different forms according to which form we most resonate with.
Exactly. And I have to say, I didn't particularly resonate with Jesus. It was just that
he said the kingdom of heaven is within. So.
He was the one that said the kingdom of heaven is within. So I'm like, all right, you said it, you show it to me. So anyway, that's why I kind of got to know him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was working with Jesus. I also started to investigate other divine beings, some ascended masters, Saint Germain, Babaji, the Yogi Christ. Once you're at that subtlest level, you can talk to anyone. You can talk to any divine being, let me put it that way.
And so you would say, based on this experience, that when these folks drop the body, they don't just merge into the absolute like a drop into the ocean, never to be distinguished from the ocean again. They still are functional on some subtle realm and able to interact for the benefit of the world.
Yes, if that is their purpose.
Yeah, right.
Some of them do just drop into the unbounded, and because for whatever reason, it's all individual at that level. It's an individual choice of divine service.
Right, but many maintain some sort of
yeah,
functionality.
many of them do. And I would love to tell people how to connect with them, which I will in a minute. Not that you'll be able to do it immediately, but with practice.
Yeah, I mean, you sat there for months before anything happened, before you even saw a glimmer of light.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now I teach people how to do it in an 8-week course. And people still need to practice, but they get the initial flavor, and they get divine wisdom, which is what I call it. So I can't. This can be taught. Where was I going? Oh yeah, how I met Divine Mother. So I'm starting to feel the presence of Divine Mother really strongly right now. So she really wants us to. She really wants us. Yeah, really. Okay, so I was doing this for people, And I started having a visual that I had ignored many times. Like you were saying, on this faint feeling level, something's happening, but I didn't look at it. And what this image was of a huge wave of light coming out of the unmanifest wholeness. It was just this huge wave of light that would then break up, and it would, you know, move into the whole universe. And I had seen that before, but I just didn't pay attention to it. So at a certain time, I started to watch it, and it was beautiful, and there was a tremendous feeling of love and, you know, joy and everything wonderful, everything divine with it. So I just started watching this wave of light come up and break, and all the different little particles of it would then combine and create something, and more particles over here were creating something.
You didn't know what it was, but
I
it was
didn't
interesting.
know what it was. Yeah, it was fascinating, and it was extremely joyful to watch. So another wave would come up, and and at one point, how this dawned on me, but I thought, that's the Creator, creating from the unmanifest. But not only is it the Creator, it's the Divine Mother birthing the creation. It's the birth of the creation that I was watching. And so the Divine Mother, it was certainly the Divine Mother, because of all the qualities of such love and all the things I mentioned, just gently and wonderfully nourishing the growth of everything in the creation, the deep just connection, because the Divine Mother was creating everything out of herself. And when I realized this is the Divine Mother, it was like I was just overwhelmed with a sense of surrender and unity. I felt complete union, you know, with the Divine Mother. And I started really focusing on the Divine Mother as the Supreme Being, the Supreme Being of the universe.
So we call it Mother, not necessarily because it's female, but because it's an aspect of divine intelligence which has this sort of nurturing, healing, supportive,
and
quality.
Creative
Birthing, quality.
Birthing
right.
was what was so.
Yeah.
That's what was the amazing thing to me, was it was birthing the creation. It was actually creating.
Like a lot of times you hear people say, well, we refer to God as He usually, you know, and you know, we have pictures of this big guy with a beard and all, and people say, oh, that's ridiculous. God is not he or she. It's just sort of, you know, pure intelligence. But what you're saying is that, you know, this pure intelligence, if that's a proper word to use, has these different qualities, and the one you begin cognizing here, really the word mother fits very nicely, because it's so creative, so
Right.
supportive, so healing,
Yes.
all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And perhaps we could even, you know, think of some masculine qualities of God that we might say is the Divine Father or some such, you know, thing, by comparison.
Yeah, my experience was definitely it was because of the feeling level that I was experiencing it as the mother, but at that level, the Divine Father has all those qualities as well. It has the incredible, like, tenderness and deep love for the creation as yourself.
Yeah, and obviously in Vedic cosmology, they personify these things. You know, you have Shiva and Shakti, and you know, Vishnu and Lakshmi, and you know, these different sort of father-mother kind of figures. And I suppose these are perhaps literal on some level, but you know, representative of these different qualities.
Definitely. My experience of the Divine Mother is that the Divine Mother is the Divine Father. Divine Mother is Shiva, is Vishnu, is that all of these are. I use the term Divine Mother, and I know it's because of the the devotional aspect, the power of the love was so overwhelming that I just associated with maternal love. And but that meant that the Divine Mother was also all of the Father, expressions of God. So that's when I started being, just focusing on Divine Mother and asking her what she had to say, what knowledge was there from Divine Mother. And I always go to the knowledge because people have experiences, people have spiritual experiences, and they don't realize that every experience has knowledge that's trying to be communicated with it. So they'll tell you the experience of, I saw this light and I saw this expression of God, and then I'll say to them, well, what was that trying to say to you? What was that communicating to you? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that, because we're so overwhelmed with just the display of the person of the divine. But if the divine is revealing itself to you, it has something to say. It's got a message for you. And so I encourage
presumably a
people,
profound message, not just
right.
invest in IBM or something, but something deeper.
Right. A very profound message. And it may be, I love you. And that is a very profound message, especially to people who maybe didn't know they were loved, or think that, a basic human problem is we all feel we're unworthy in some way, and particularly unworthy in the eyes of God. So when God comes forth to say, I love you, you are so important to me, it's a life-changing experience. So that's one of the things that I did when I saw this, the Divine Mother displaying and creating the universe. I started asking her what she had to say. And because I had practiced this previously with Jesus, I was a little bit, I had a little bit more skill and could start to communicate with the Divine Mother. And essentially, I've been communicating with her ever since. I mean, she wants everyone to know her. She wants to talk to everybody. She wants, and essentially what she wants people to know is how deeply she loves them, and how she's there for them. And how, people feel so isolated and alone, and, life can be very rough, and how she wants to help them. She wants to help people move through the forest that we, can experience of life, where we're lost and don't know where to turn and feel like we're back up against the wall, and what do we do? Her compassion for us is just immense, and she wants to help us move through our life in a very personal way. And that's kind of the message that I'm giving to people. It's like that's become my message, which is sort of just in service to Divine Mother, to tell people she cares and she wants to talk to you. She wants to communicate with you. And these tools and techniques are methods that I've found that have helped me connect with her, and they could very, very readily help you connect with her. But that's really what she wants. She wants to bring all of her children home. And by bringing home, that means bringing them back into her heart, bringing them back into their self-knowledge, knowledge of themselves even as one with her. And it's just, so that's really what I do now, is help Divine Mother connect with people and communicate with people, and then help people connect. I always, on my free webcasts, I tell people how to connect with her, the first step, because there are further steps, but the first step is the most important step. And essentially, I can tell you that how now, if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say something, but you might as well just go ahead.
Okay. Well, All you have to do is breathe into your heart,
Mm-hmm.
center in your heart. And you do have to get heart centered. And one of the things I do in my webcast is I go through about 20 minutes of settling people down with a softening technique, and breaking structures and saying go to discordant energies, and bringing people into the heart so that the heart is very alive and awake. And then say the name. All you really have to do to call forth any being is say their name.
Mm-hmm.
So we just say the name Divine Mother, but I don't encourage, you don't have to say it out loud. Usually people have their eyes closed and they're settled quietly, and I just have them say Divine Mother as an impulse of the heart. And then notice what happens, because I'm having people notice the energy of Divine Mother. And it might be vague, it might be faint, but just notice what happens when you say Divine Mother. There may be, some people notice, now we haven't had much of the preparation here, but some people notice a ripple of energy, some people notice a warmth, some people notice expansion, some people notice depth. And if they don't notice anything, then I would just say continue to breathe into your heart to get yourself more centered there. If you feel a block, many people will notice a block. I have them say go into the light. Just say go into the light, go into the light, and then breathe in it again, into the heart again, and just say Divine Mother. What you're looking for is just the vibration of her name. Even saying Divine Mother, there's a vibration. So first you can just notice Divine Mother as the energy wave of that name. And soften into it. And then say it again, Divine Mother, is that you? And notice the energy. You're noticing something very subtle, because I'm teaching the subtle senses to wake up. The subtle senses need to wake up to perceive the divine. So that's all you say, Divine Mother, and then soften. Are you there? And a lot of people, we've been trained to ignore our subtle senses. So the mind might say, well, I noticed some expansion, but why wouldn't I notice that anyway? We've been talking about Divine Mother for the last 15 minutes, or 20. Anyway, trust it. Trust that experience. If it's not real, it'll become obvious. But if it is real, it'll increase. And so that's what you're looking for. And then I say, I have people say, Divine Mother, come forth. Because she will. Her energy will come forth if you say, Divine Mother, come forth. But I'm emphasizing to you, it's an energy. It's not that somebody's going to walk in the door and say, here I am. It's a vibration that will become stronger and stronger as you work with it. In the same way, oh, okay. She's talking to me, telling me what to do now.
Okay, Mom.
I know. I was actually going to say, maybe I should have Rick interview Divine Mother.
Well, I could do some of that.
But
what's she saying now?
well, she wants us to connect with her, and so she's kind of saying, well, she's saying tell people they need some healing. They need some healing. And especially at these subtle levels, they need healing. So she says, don't be discouraged. I'm here to help you heal. She's saying use the techniques. And she says, and one of the other techniques is my name.
Divine Mother.
Divine Mother,
Mhm.
saying my name. And she says, in other traditions, chanting the name of Divine Mother, be it in Sanskrit or any other language, is a technique for healing and uniting with me.
Yeah, like the Gayatri mantra or whatever,
Yeah,
you know, things like that.
Right. But even in English, the word Divine Mother, repeated over and over again, is going to create my vibration, which will heal you and deepen your experience of me. So that's the first thing that I teach people. There's a lot more to it. There's a discernment value where to discern whether what you're getting is really from Divine Mother or just your intellect or from some other level of creation that you don't want to have anything to do with, that could be even be damaging to you. You want to be very alert to things like that. And I teach that when in this course that I teach. But that's really the first step, is just saying Divine Mother. And the other thing is, at that level of that subtle, quiet relative, you can say Buddha, and you can bring Lord Buddha forth, that vibration. You can say Lord Krishna. Certainly you can say Jesus Christ. They are all vibrations. They're all, frequencies. They're divine frequencies. They're coming right out of that unmanifest. And it's, once you get used to it, communing with them there, it's very comfortable. I mean, and it's quite a wonderful experience. I mean, your life becomes very much in relationship with the divine on a very, I want to say, concrete level. Even though many people don't think vibration is concrete, it really is. It's the first wave that comes out of the unmanifest, is a vibration, a wave of light, which has a personality. And that is the divine relationship that I was looking for, the personal relationship with the divine. Whereas I had the relationship with the infinite, the infinite wholeness, but I wanted to experience the personal relationship, and I have. It's great. It's sort of, I found the kingdom of heaven. It's not that I've opened the door, let me put it that way. I've found the way in, and the more I go in and experience it, just the richer my life becomes, and the more knowledge is available.
When you were talking about Divine Mother earlier and going through the whole thing, the image that came to mind was that we're not talking about something that's far off that will come to us.
Right.
We're talking about something that's oceanic, that that already contains us, and that it's like the analogy of fish in the ocean looking for water or being thirsty. It sounds absurd because they're just completely engulfed in water. And so that divine is omnipresent, and it's just a matter of clearing away, I guess. You can explain what it's a matter of, but it's just a matter of establishing that connection with something which ultimately we're already connected with, but which is obscured by some ignorance, some blocks, some whatever, and which, as you were saying, wants us to make that connection. It's not like it's going to be elusive or shy or try to avoid us if we attempt to make the connection. It's just a matter of choosing to make that connection.
Yes. Yeah, because she's making the connection with us all the time. It's just we don't see it.
We're ignoring it.
We're ignoring it, yeah. And when we make the choice to make the connection, it's like the two circuits
Connect.
meet. Yeah.
Well, you know, you're talking about subtle senses and subtle perception and all that needing to be enlivened, and just kind of the way the senses are structured. By habit, they are outer directed, and the outer world appears to be gross, concrete, and so continual engagement with the outer world to the exclusion of the inner coarsens the faculties of perception. And so it's sort of like a muscle that atrophies if you don't use it. So all that subtle stuff, you know, not being used for decades, lifetimes, you know, the potential is there, but we need rehab.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We have to wake it up. And I really think that all of my, you know, all that time that I was spending with my eyes closed, you know, I was waking it up. I had to wake up my own subtle perceptions to be able to, you know, see the divine that I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then I got little techniques and tools of how to help me wake up my subtle perceptions and how to clear these blocks and fears and, you know, things that we carry. And so the whole process was necessary.
So you're just kind of, in a way, you're pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. I mean, obviously, you're resorting to a power much higher than yourself, but you're like, it's like, remember the principle of the snowplow, it clears its own path. You didn't readily find techniques and practices and teachers and whatnot, although you found some great ones. You didn't necessarily receive all the instructions and information you needed to do the exploration you've been doing. And so you kind of just, it was a self-exploration process.
Definitely,
and a self-discovery process. And in the course of doing that, the invention of these techniques. And I presume it's ongoing. I mean, you know, certainly you do associate with great teachers still. You go to see Amma and probably do other things. But there is this sort of ongoing inner exploration, right?
Definitely, yes. In fact, I found the inner adventure far more exciting than the outer adventure.
Yeah.
Once I started, you know, closing my eyes and looking to see what was inside, it was like worlds opening up.
And it's not like you lost interest in your family or anything, right?
Oh no, no, we're still.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's not like, oh, this is boring. You guys are boring. I'm going to go close my eyes.
No, in fact, the outer, you know, my family has definitely kept me grounded and practical all through this. You know, doing something like this with my, you know, even with my daughter when she was an infant, and then, you know, starts crying, you have to go in, you've got to, you know, change the diaper and feed them, and, you know, then go off, you know, and do all the worldly things that you do with children. And all the way through, you know, we're still doing all those things.
Yeah, well, if you're really going to be of any use to the world and be able to bring such things to the world, then you probably need to know how to function in the world.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
and
true.
Otherwise, you'd just be sitting in a room someplace. And,
Yeah. No, my life hasn't allowed me to just sit in a room someplace, although just for a few hours at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when an explorer is exploring, like there's always the next horizon, you know. And like I just watched the movie Kon-Tiki a couple of weeks ago. It was great. Thor Heyerdahl going across the Pacific Ocean and you know, they're always kind of looking for land and, you know, or looking to the horizon and figuring out where they are on the map and things like that, making sure they're catching the current. So, you know, with you, what is your sense of the map of life, where you are on that map, and what there might yet be to discover in the course of your exploration?
Well, gosh. I'm sort of at a point where I've found that being innocent is the best is the best position to take, because when you're innocent, then things can be revealed to you that you might have not looked at before, you might have missed. So at the moment, the biggest thing that I'm doing is just, you know, teaching people, using my website to reach more people. And personally, the journey just gets deeper and deeper. It just goes into more and more depth.
Well, in the case of Kon-Tiki, they were at the mercy of the currents and the wind. They couldn't go back to Peru if they wanted to. They had to keep going west because that's the way the currents were taking them.
Oh.
So where do you feel like the currents are taking you, innocently? Where do they seem to be taking you?
I'm referencing inside now. Well, they're taking me to just continue to erase any semblance of fear or pain from my own life. And then as I do that, I find that my experience of myself becomes more expanded. And so I take on other projects rather than by just working on clearing my own system. I start clearing the world system. You know, I do a lot of work in healing and clearing the world. And so that's kind of that's been a big concern of mine, is to, you know, just do what I can to use the knowledge that I have to dispel the darkness and the ignorance in the world.
And you don't just mean by doing webinars and teaching techniques, you also mean like eyes closed, within your consciousness, you're
that's primarily
serving
what
as
I
a
mean.
washing machine of sorts.
Well, and then we have, I've got a group that meets on Tuesdays, and we always address world situations, whatever's up in the world.
So you've been working on Syria and things
Yeah,
like
I've
that.
been working on Syria this last few weeks. And, but just, you know, really, it's a big job to uplift the whole world. Huge. And so I'm always looking, so that's kind of where I personally sense myself, like you said, individually when I'm doing my own internal meditative work, and also getting groups, you know, the groups that I'm with, we always do something for the world. So, and then of course there's the whole universe. There's the solar system, and there's the universe. That, but mostly we're here on the planet right now, and this planet needs a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And so that's where most of my attention is going. And you know, I would love to teach as many people as possible how to work with energy, how to be a master of energy, so that when there's something that you don't like the war in Syria, we've been pouring divine light into it, just flooding the whole thing with divine light. And you know, obviously more and more people doing that, and there are other groups doing that. I can't say my group is definitely not the only one. There's lots of groups doing that. So participating in that, the global awakening, is really, you know, where I'm going. I mean, until the globe awakes fully, there's a lot of work to do right here on Mother Earth.
Do you think it ever will? Is there ever such a thing, or is it just
I think
ongoing?
It will.
There's always going to be people who aren't quite so awake as others, and you know, new people being born. And
well, I think there's something big happening. I think you know, in the next 100 years, we could say, there's something big happening, and that there is going to be a big change, a big shift, and everyone who knows about it, and that's certainly not everyone who's embodied on the planet that knows about it and that's working.
It's a minority
for it.
fraction.
Right. So, but we happen to be in that minority, and so we have to do what we're here to do, which is help shift it. And a minority can shift it, you know, as you know.
Sure. Yeah, in
So
recent interviews, I've quoted a lot of those statistics, those principles of pacemaker cells in the heart, 1%, and,
yes.
photons and lasers, square root of
Mm-hmm.
1%. There's so many systems in nature where
Yeah.
a tiny bit can shift the whole thing in a
Right.
different direction.
Right.
Do you feel like, when I address these questions, I'm addressing either Connie or Divine Mother, or whoever, you can take it from any level you
Okay.
want, but do you feel like it's kind of a done deal in terms of the world shifting to a better place, or do you think that we could do ourselves in with rogue nuclear weapons and Fukushima and, global warming and all that stuff?
Okay. So I'm going to let Divine Mother just
Okay.
say it. So here's how I connect with her. I focus my attention on that subtlest level, and I say her name, just like, and I say Divine Mother, and I say it, inside, not out loud. And she's saying, I am Divine Mother, I come in the name of truth, and I love you. The world is a beautiful place. We are going to change it. All of the things that you mentioned, the catastrophes that have occurred, and the pain on the planet needs to be changed. It's crying out for change. And if we don't address it, we aren't doing our duty. So we have to address it. We're not going to allow it to overcome us. Mother Nature won't allow it to overcome us. She says, divine love won't allow it to overcome us. This is the ebb and flow of life. And right now we're in a big flow. This is the focus now. Healing Mother Earth. Trusting yourself enough to heal the planet. Mother Nature wants the planet healed. And Mother Nature can overcome anything. You will be surprised at what Mother Nature is capable of. So don't despair. Work with me. I am the Mother of the universe. My love can transform anything. As you work with me, we generate the energy of divine love. I will show you many miracles, and miracles will become normal. Just work with me.
If we're going to arrive at an enlightened planet, there are so many things in our current planet which are, would be completely inappropriate and out of place in an enlightened planet. Economic systems, agricultural systems,
Yes.
many, many things which just would not fit in a more enlightened world. Will the transition from this to that necessarily be somewhat cataclysmic? Will there necessarily be economic collapse, billions of people dying, and so on? Or is there a way for it to all transition more smoothly?
Well, there are going to be changes. There are definitely going to be changes. Everything that isn't working has to collapse. So I am not going to say it's a cataclysmic collapse. It's going to be a smooth collapse for those who are open to transformation. It's all about transformation. And those who are open to transformation, it will flow. The transformation will flow as fluidly as the bud of a flower transforms into a full bloom. But for those who are not into transformation, who want to try to hold on to the old ways, it's going to be more difficult because they're trying to hold on.
Now, there are lots of people who are currently in the midst of what appear to be transformative events, like Syria, for instance, that we mentioned. Mm-hmm. Were all those people somehow shepherded in this lifetime into a very difficult situation, or might there be some? I mean, are those all people who have been holding on and therefore they're having a hard time of it, or the people who were killed by the Japanese tsunami, if we consider that to have been part of the changes that are taking place? In other words, sometimes these transformational events seem to be societal and so large that regardless of one's spiritual orientation, one is kind of caught up in the midst of it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, even though there are huge groups of people involved in particular dramas that are going on the planet, each one of those people is an individual with individual karma and a unique divine purpose to fulfill. So I am not looking at the groups as I'm looking at the groups as individuals. Because I, Divine Mother, work with individuals. I work with each person's heart. And so there are people in Japan and Syria who are extremely highly evolved beings who are helping with the transition there. And they may look to you like they are part of the group that is suffering or resisting something or fighting for something. They are doing something for me to help me introduce new light on this planet. So I love them all, and I don't want to diminish them in any way by saying they are part of a group that just has to experience this way. Every member of that group has a special, unique experience of me, of life, of love, of truth, and they're all growing in their own ways. And the grace of God is guiding this transformation. I don't think I can quite explain to you how the divine intelligence has a focus on every individual human being on this planet. It's quite remarkable. It's remarkable. So that is why I don't want to say, yes, this group is, this group has to experience that, or another group has to experience something else, because each individual in that group is having their own experience of what's happening in that region of the world.
And would it be safe to say that whatever happens, if whatever is happening, if we zoom back far enough and see it in the big enough picture, it's all for the good, it's all an evolutionary process, or is it more like there's a battle of good and evil, and sometimes evil gets the other hand and it's not so good, or is it actually, in the biggest picture, good even if evil at times seems to be getting the upper hand?
Well, what I want you to understand is that evil, what is evil, and those people who are represented evil are also in the process of growth and evolution. Mm-hmm. And they have chosen to stand with that side of life because they're growing and learning. And they will actually grow out of the evil.
And they're serving an evolutionary purpose, even though they may seem to be evil. So, like for instance,
That's
Ravana
right.
and the Ramayana, who battled with Rama and kidnapped his wife and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't have been a story without him. And,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, there was an evolutionary outcome to the whole conflict, which perhaps might not have been achieved
Mm-hmm.
had there not been a conflict.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly the truth. So, in the larger picture, the evolution is ongoing. There are choices being made, and those choices are very significant. That's the wild card with planet Earth. Is that human beings do have free will, and that they are making choices, and the choices are sometimes unpredictable. And so with Earth, there's this level of unpredictableness that makes it particularly fascinating. So you being here, participating in this, is a tremendous evolutionary burst for you.
You meaning
Whoever's listening to
Yeah.
us. And that is why I want to help you. I want to help you make those choices that are going to expand your growth and evolution, that are going to enhance your heart. Yes, because overall, the whole universe is conducted in love. And that is something that most human beings haven't quite understood. Love is not really appreciated here yet for what it is, for its power, for its power of evolutionary force. It has an incredible power to propel evolution forward. And I would love to help you with that. Because it's inevitable that power will take over. That power has to take over. It runs everything in the universe. So that is why I'm encouraging people to move to their hearts, to start making the choices in alignment with truth and love. This is what hasn't been done on the planet. The choices haven't been made in alignment with truth and love. And so the situation has gotten extreme.
Well, that's a good segue into concluding, because you have a number of ways in which people can take you up on that offer to help. Obviously the best, the most simple way is to just go to your website, and then they'll find everything there.
Yep, divinemotheronline.net.
Mm-hmm. And I'll be linking to that as always from batgap.com, from Connie's page on batgap.com. And so you've mentioned like things they can download, and there's a little email you can get every day with a little kind of Divine Mother message.
Oh, right.
I subscribe to that.
And there's also the free webcasts.
Free webcasts.
We do those at least once a month.
Like on live stream or something like that. Yeah.
Free webcast. Well, you either go to our webpage, or there's also a teleconference option or a Skype option.
Okay. Do you do individual sessions with people still?
I do.
Yeah.
I do individual private sessions for those who would like that.
Over Skype or in person if they're here.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually, Skype or telephone.
Telephone, yeah.
One of those.
Okay.
So that would be, and I have lots of membership programs. I have something called the Ascension Program, which is a membership program that is very, very hands-on and very powerful. Ascension is discussed and explained as the highest value, the highest goal of human life, to develop ascension. So we talk about that. And I have the Dialogue with Divine Mother, where I teach people how to talk to Divine Mother. There are many, many wonderful things available.
Good. Well, I always admire people who systematize things in a way. Just kind of, maybe it's because that's the way Maharishi always did it, and I kind of saw the value of that. Because a number of people they'll get up and they'll just describe their experience, and other people will listen, and never the twain shall meet. But if people kind of can come up with some practical means whereby one can rise to the same level of experience that the person is having, then that it's kind of more useful. So I'm glad you're doing that. Great. Well, let me make some wrap-up points. I've been speaking with Connie Huebner, and I must say, I feel very kind of uplifted or settled, or whichever direction you want to take. It's really sublime sitting with you like this for a couple of hours, and it has a nice influence.
Thank you.
And you've just heard about her website, which I'll be linking to, and you've heard at length all the things you can do, so I want to elaborate on those. With regard to Buddha at the Gas Pump, this is an ongoing interview series. I think Connie will be number 194 or something like that, so there's plenty of back issues, so to speak, to listen to if you'd like, and they're all archived at batgap.com, both alphabetically and chronologically. And there's an email newsletter thing you can sign up for to be notified of new ones, which happens about once a week. There's an audio podcast. If you don't have time to sit in front of your computer and watch things, I don't blame you. You can sign up for the audio podcast, get it all on your iPod, and listen while you're commuting or something. There's a discussion group at batgap.com. So there's general discussion areas, and then there is an individual discussion group area set up for each interview. So you'll see a link to that on Connie's page. There's a donate button, which I don't make a big fuss over, but I really rely upon people clicking it occasionally, and making a donation enables this whole thing to keep rolling. And I think that just about covers it. If I'm leaving something out, I'll remember it next week, or you'll find it when you go there. So thanks a lot for listening or watching. Thank you very much, Connie. Make our microphones will make a big noise. And this is the value of doing these in person. I can't do that over Skype. And we'll see you next week.